It's blessings to have you on with us.
Glad to be here.
Hey, it took us a few shots to get you on, but we finally made it happen. Persistence pays off, man.
Most definitely.
For sure. So, Henry, I wanted to start it off by welcoming you on our show. And our first question to you: how did you get involved with football as a kid?
Just something I remember watching on TV, and of course my older brothers would go out in the front yard and throw the ball around. It's kind of how it all started for me. And I just remember one day turning on the TV, and there was a pro game on. It was the Dallas Cowboys. So the first thing that caught my eye was a big star on the side of the helmet, and number 22 was streaking down the sideline. Bob Hayes, number 22. And I became a Cowboy fan, even though I lived in California. But that was my team growing up. And that's ever since that time, that's when I became interested and would go out in the front yard with my friends, playing catch all the time and just working on my skills.
I hear you, man. Who else were some of your role models besides the great Cowboy?
He was my main guy. But I love watching the Lynn Swans, because he was so graceful in the way he would catch the ball and things like that. And that's something I always try to emulate as a receiver for the most part. I'm trying to think anybody that really else that stood out at that particular point in time. When it comes to any kind of sports, that was the main thing. I was a football guy.
Yes,
Track
sir.
was my passion during the off season to keep myself in shape. So that was also something I competed in with track. I was a jumper, long jumper, triple jumper, high jumper. It's something I had always done. And it just came natural to me. So that's something I really tried to focus on and just kept me in shape during the off season.
Yes, sir. So scrolling it forward a little bit to your college years, how did Fresno State pitch you, man? How did they get you?
Well,
hook, line, and sinker.
I was a mama's boy growing up, so I wasn't going anywhere. I have 5 older brothers, 3 older sisters. I'm the baby in the family. But the fact that I was a mama's boy, I knew I wasn't leaving Fresno. I had chances, to go other places, but I took 3 trips, but I knew I was going to stay at home.
I hear you, man. But those years at Fresno State, if you had to pick your best moment, what was your best moment there?
I tell you what, I had a lot of great moments at Fresno State. I think my first touchdown in the new stadium, my freshman year, we played in the older stadium, which was called Rackett Stadium, which wasn't on campus. Then we finally, my sophomore year, we built a new stadium on campus. And towards the end of my sophomore year, when we played our first home game in there, and I caught a pass, and I can't remember exactly how far it was, probably 40 or 50 yards, where I had to break about 3 or 4 tackles and got to the end zone. So to be, able to score in a new stadium was a special moment for me.
Yes, sir. So scrolling a little bit forward to your senior year, the 1983 NFL draft. How did you spend the night, and what was the emotions like when you got picked by the Rams?
I tell you what, it was a blessing. It was a dream come true to have my mom and dad there with me. The neat thing about that time, it was on the East Coast. I was on the West Coast. So it was 5 o'clock in the morning, which was really a blessing for me because I couldn't sleep anyway. So, to have it happen when it did, it was a relief. I was a little nervous because, people say, okay, it's a good chance you may go in the first round. It's a good chance you may go later on. Who knows? But I remember the Raiders was really interested. And they said it's a good chance I may go in the first round. Because after the Raiders pick, I think it was Washington. It was East Coast teams. I didn't want to go to the East Coast. I was a West Coast guy. And sure enough, the Raiders ended up picking Don Mosbar, the big offensive lineman, who was actually from the San Joaquin Valley, not very far from where I lived in Fresno.
Yes, sir.
But I come to find out, I guess he had a back injury, but they didn't know about it. But that's who they ended up picking. And after that happened, like I say, I was sweating bullets because of these East Coast teams that was coming up. But I remember John Robinson from the Rams told me, He said, it's a good chance we're going to try to get a running back in the first round, being Eric Dickerson. But if you're around in the second round, it's a good chance we may pick you. So I was just praying that it would get to that point in the second round, that sure enough, when they came up, sure enough, that's when they ended up picking me. So I was relieved to be that close to home, where now my family can come down and watch me play. And it was a dream come true.
Definitely. With you and Eric, Eric's been on our show as well. Eric's a great guy, but with him in practice, what's the best moment for you with him? The flashes.
The thing I remember rookie year in training camp was at Cal State Fullerton. Eric is so smooth and so effortless when he runs. Of course, he runs upright. He was running one day in practice, and it doesn't look like he's running. He's so smooth. And I remember Coach Robinson coming up to him and saying, Eric, you got to run. He's like, Coach, I'm running. But he was just so smooth, it just didn't look like it until you put somebody next to him and watch him run away from him. It's the only time you know how fast he's going. But sure enough, a couple of plays later, Eric came breaking through the line. The DB was taking an angle, and Eric ran out of the angle. The DB never caught it. And we both looked at John Robinson. He kind of looked and just nodded his head. Said, okay, you don't have to worry about me saying anything about you anymore. But I remember that just like it was yesterday.
I hear you, man. So with the NFL and our conversation now, what was the moment the league welcomed you?
I think it was the next day is when I flew into LA to meet the owner and to meet Coach Robinson. And just going there, I just felt at home. I really did. And just maybe the fact that it was in California, I don't know if that had something to do with it. It's something I was familiar with. But I just felt comfortable. You know, and the great thing about being at Fresno State with Jim Sweeney, we ran a pro-style passing attack. So the transition for me from college to the NFL was a lot easier than some people, because I've already been running the routes that they run at the NFL level. So that transition was really, really a lot easier for me. Just the experience part of it I had to learn. For sure.
Among the teams that you played for in the NFL, what was the hardest system that you had to play with and for?
I don't know if it was ever hard for me. Like I say, I think Fresno State prepared me for what was coming in the NFL. And as long as I stayed in the playbook, and the great thing about when John Robinson, of course, was John Robinson, that we ran the ball 90% of the time. So I became a decent blocker, in which I didn't mind. I took a lot of pride in blocking for Eric because he'd get the ball anything's possible. It wasn't until I think it was my 5th year, we'd already traded Eric, of course, to Indianapolis. And Ernie Zampese came over from San Diego. And I know Eric Coryell had heard a lot about it. And I remember going into the room and sitting down with him. And at that time, I think I was catching 40 balls a year. And I remember him telling me, he said, Henry, there's a chance you can catch 60, 70, 80 balls a year. I looked at him and I said, okay, I know you're good, but come on now. Really? I just couldn't imagine catching that many balls. And sure enough, that year I caught 86 balls.
Killing it, man. Killing it.
And his system, and the thing that really made it easy for me and for the young receivers is the system that he used, it was digits. So you have a route tree from 1 to 9 with each route. So we use the digits to tell you what routes you ran. So as long as you knew where you were in the formation and what digits you were, you knew what route you had to run. So I think it really kept it simple for us and allowed us to line up and play.
That's a great aspect to football right there. With the guys that I brought on our show, I've never heard that sort of system be ran in the NFL. Do they do that a lot? Or
not anymore. They've kind of gotten away from it. A lot of it's terminology.
Yes, sir.
So it's memorization for the most part, but which is anything you have to learn and memorize as long as you stay in the playbook.
Yes,
but
sir.
I just thought it was such a great thing, and it's very similar to what we did at Fresno State. So again, that transition was very easy for me to move around in different places. Like I say, no long as you know where you are in the formation and what ditches you get, kept it simple, and I loved it.
Definitely. So scrolling to your last year in the NFL, when you hung your pads up and your cleats up, life after football, how have you applied those trials and tribulations to your personal life?
That's the great thing about football. The fact, you deal with adversity, the ups and downs, and that's part of life that you have to deal with. And I think it prepared me for that. It's not always easy. And you talk to a lot of former players to walk away from the game. The blessing for me, I played 16 years. I got it out of my system. It's one of those times when it's cut short that you have struggles with it. For me, I was good. I felt good about it, walking away from it. I had my fun. It was a blessing, not just play 1 year, but to play 16 years. Because I guarantee you go back to my neighborhood and talk to my boys that I grew up with. They would have been told you I was the last one they thought would have had that opportunity to play at the next level of the NFL.
For sure. Well, and my next two questions for you are 21 NFL based. Rams versus Seattle next week, Thursday night, man. What's the prediction, man?
It should be a good game. I mean, no different than this last game. I was a little disappointed how, of course, it turned out against Arizona, but that's always been a rival. I think San Francisco's been a rival at one point, but I think with Seattle, it's another level. So it's going to be interesting to see how it works out. Because I don't know, is the game played in Seattle? Or the first?
It's in Seattle.
Okay, so that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. That's a tough place to play.
For sure, that 12 man.
Yeah, I'm hoping after this, this last loss, that they'll get things together and be able to put it together to go on the road, because they don't need to, because it's a tough place to win.
Definitely. Your last year in the NFL, you played for the Patriots. How do you feel the Patriots will bounce back from last night's defeat against Tampa?
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. That was an emotional night, of course, with Tom coming back for the first time. But they played well. You got to give them a lot of credit. The young quarterback, Jones, they played well. They did a good job. I mean, a short field goal just off to the left a little bit. But they showed me that they have the ability to play, and to do things like they need to on a big stage. Now, just a matter of continue to do that. It's a long season, it's early on, anything's possible, but it's how you finish, not necessarily how you start.
For sure. Mac played really good, 275 yards.
Yes.
Very
much so.
That's a big game with Brady.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and he was doing his thing. So, like I said, I was impressed.
For sure. Hey, but the turnovers and ball security was the key to last night's game.
Yeah, and when it's wet and it's rainy, that sure enough, that has a tendency to happen.
For sure.
This concludes our episode today, folks. We greatly appreciate the support. And if you're not a subscriber yet, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to get all our up-to-date content. And if you like this video, hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. We welcome you back next time.